Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Welcome to The Ray Taylor Show, where I bring you the reviews on the latest movies and TV shows, as well as classic and foreign films. I'm your host, Ray Taylor, and on this podcast, I'll be talking about all things film and television. Whether you're looking for a new show to binge, or want to know if that blockbuster is worth the trip to the theater, or just want to hear my thoughts on a classic or foreign film, I've got you covered. So join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for new episodes, and let's dive into the world of film and television together. On today's episode, I am going to be reviewing and talking about the first film by Robert Eggers, The Witch. This movie came out in 2015, got a wide release in 2016. I will be reviewing and watching and talking about a new Robert Eggers film every week. He's done 3 films so far. And this film, The Witch, as well as The Lighthouse, I have already watched in the past, but I'm rewatching. And we will be doing a re-review of The Lighthouse. It was one of the early reviews of The Ray Taylor Show when that first hit theaters. But I'm rewatching his films because I like to watch movies in a franchise. I also love watching movies from a director, all of the films from a director, really getting in the mind of the director and seeing their vibes, see how they like to tell stories. And Robert Eggers is one of many up-and-coming directors who has a very unique style, telling these horror films in a very unique way. And I wanted to get into and appreciate, so I could appreciate his films more. And starting off with his first film from 2015, The Witch, which is written and directed by Robert Eggers, starring Anya Taylor-Joy, a young Anya Taylor-Joy, Ralph Ineson, and Kate Dickie. This is a movie about a family back in the 1600s, 1630s, New England. They are dealing with and experiencing tragedies after being banished from a Puritan village. There's a lot of subtle supernatural elements to this film. The bulk of the horror comes from the family itself and their specific religious beliefs, and them trying to build a life outside of a community in a time where, there's not a lot of support for. It's very, very hard living, And, who's to blame? Who or what is to blame for the tragic events that do happen? This is a movie that, on my second watch, on the first watch, I probably watched this movie, but I wasn't paying much attention the first time. This is, very stylish film. The characters are all speaking in, I would imagine, an authentic version of English that was spoken back then, which is very different from today. And in this viewing, I put the subtitles on, which I feel helped quite a bit more in me understanding, despite the fact that they're speaking English, but they're using words in ways that we don't use words. They're using different versions of words, and it's kind of weird to, on its face, realize they're speaking a different version of English. But with the subtitles, it helps me to understand, and it's just kind of crazy that I can understand what they're saying, despite the fact that they are speaking English in such a different way. But I loved it. This rewatch, I loved this movie, and it makes me more excited to go through and watch The Lighthouse again, because that was a movie that I wasn't really into. I remember when I watched that movie, I had gone to the theater after working, was exhausted, and was kind of fighting off falling asleep while watching the film, which is very weird. Both of these films are, and I haven't seen The Huntsman yet. I think it's The Huntsman. Haven't seen that yet, and I know I'm excited to see these movies because I really do enjoy Robert Eggers' specific brand, if you could call it that, style of storytelling, really bringing authenticity, a level of like extreme authenticity to these stories that are horror stories, but in a lot of ways the human element is the most horrific element of the movie. But great performances, great cinematography, and really transports you to that time and place, which is great. It definitely feels like you are in the 1600s, seeing how insane life was, to see and experience the level of religious fundamentalism existed in a family that was banished from a Puritan. So it's like they potentially aren't even at the extreme end of what the religious fanaticism was of the time, which is kind of crazy. So I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, maybe if you've seen it and didn't like it, maybe go back and rewatch it. Like, know that like he definitely does the thing, like the Jaws thing with horror, right? You don't see everything. There are definitely memorable visuals in this movie, but a lot of the horrific things are happening in your brain because he's very like explicitly not showing you a lot of things, a lot of close-ups of things, and a very vague way of showing what's going on, to where those events play out in your brain in a way that you couldn't capture in film, like, and that's the thing that Jaws did so beautifully, because you didn't see the shark. It made it far more horrific. So I think he does that to an even better, more beautiful, more creative, more artistic sense than even Jaws, obviously. Definitely a very different movie than a Steven Spielberg film. But I believe that was Spielberg, right? I'm almost positive. This movie, young Anya Taylor-Joy, which amazing. The first time I remember seeing her, I think Queen's Gambit really was the time where I was like, I want to, this, she knows what she's doing. After seeing this, it's like, oh, she's been doing this. She was doing this way before. Amazing performance from her. She is like our final girl for this movie in a lot of ways, to kind of fit this horror film into the template of many horror films. The dad is great. He's got a great grizzled voice, who I believe the actor for that is, was it Ralph Innes is his name? Oh, where'd these actors go? Yeah, Ralph Innes playing William. Super good, low, grizzled voice of like, his voice really expresses the constant struggle to exist in this reality, which I thought was great. You have the family obviously being kicked out of this Puritan village, right? It starts with them kind of being told to leave this village. Yet this family that we're following, we don't know what life was like in that village, but we see what this family is like and what their religious beliefs are, which seems to be very extreme. But it's also in a time where we didn't know a lot about science and health and things, so a lot of people are just defining their realities through these stories that have been developed in order to control people. And it's interesting to see how horrific it would be to actually live in those times under those conditions where people believed witches exist. People believed that, like, I mean, there's people today in 2023 that have very similar, if not identical, beliefs to these people, right? Thinking that Satanism and demonic things happen all of the time, and that evil people are that way because they've been possessed by the devil, or they're being controlled by the devil. So it's kind of interesting to see those elements of this film. Sad to see those elements still present in modern society in a lot of ways, which is kind of a bummer. So this family, they get kicked out of their village and they kind of just travel until they find a piece of land out that's just outside of this forest. They're like, this is where we're going to live, right? That is the kind of reality of what it was like back then. You just kind of go to a place and maybe you move into a village, or maybe you do this homesteader type of a life where you just say, this is a piece of land. I guess we could build a cabin here, start a farm here. And then that's what they did, right? They built this cabin to live in. They have some livestock. They have some goats. They try to grow corn. Obviously, things aren't going very well, as things tend to do in horror films, as I'm sure things tended to be in the 1600s New England area. You know, not always gray, no sunny days, all overcast, so it's always dark, always gloomy. Things aren't growing, crops are rotting. Definitely the difficult side of existence by far. And like I said, the human element of this is, I would say, far more horrific than the supernatural elements that are kind of tangential. They're kind of peripheral to this story, right? The focus is really on this family and their daughter, Thomasin, played by Anya Taylor-Joy, who is, I would imagine, I don't know if they told, maybe they said she's 13, but it was kind of implied that she's like of that age where she's starting to go through puberty. Obviously, her body's starting to change. Her brother Caleb has a thing where he's fixated on her chest, right? Which is another aspect of living at that time in that way, how you are secluded by yourself. The level and amount of incest that would probably happen at that time, or happened at that time, is just insanity. But you see this kid who's also, I mean, both of these kids are at a time in their life where they're going through these changes and they have nothing else around them. All of the only people in their existence are their family members. But yeah, a lot of tension and horror, mostly due to this family and their religious beliefs, I would say. You know, and it also deals with that feeling of being accused for things, being wrongfully accused for things that you know you're innocent of, right? But there's no way to prove it, right? Because they believe what they believe, and because they're so used to taking things on faith, right? Not needing proof of a thing to believe it. So not needing proof to believe, not needing proof to put blame on, right? A lot of cognitive bias going on as well. But seeing those circumstances kind of pile up on our main character, Thomasin, is part of that, like, you know, it's the same kind of a thing like Shawshank Redemption. You know, you feel like just endless sympathy for this character that you know is just in a situation that they have zero control over, and it's just getting worse, right? And the witch aspect of this movie, which for the title of this movie, for you not to think that there's a witch, this isn't part of the spoiler section, so I'm not trying not to spoil anything that there is a witch involved. But even that, like I said, is very peripheral to this story, right? The witch is, in their view, to blame for a lot of things, and might be true, most likely true, to be blamed for it as well. But it's not necessarily, it's like the catalyst for the horror in a lot of ways, but not the direct, right? It's the thing that ignites these parents in being horrific in a lot of ways, versus the witch being the direct cause of a lot of this stuff, which maybe there's probably ways to view this or to read this movie that might be that, but it's not like we're not seeing the witch very often. And when we do see the witch, it's very subtle. We don't see the details of what the witch is doing necessarily, but we kind of get a sense of it, which I appreciate. It's that kind of that vague nature of a horror movie where a lot of that horrific stuff, a lot of the details of the things you're seeing are happening in your brain. You're imagining them. But, really, really great in that way. And like I said, the old-timey way of speaking, I highly recommend watching this movie with subtitles. It definitely helped me out a lot to just kind of keep pace with the things they're saying and what they're talking about. And, also the religious grooming that goes on, right? Because their parents are super religious. And you see how that plays out and how, in many ways, causes these kids to be far more traumatized because of this religious reality they live in, right? A baby goes missing, and the son is like, well, the baby didn't get baptized, so the baby's in hell now? And why is that? The baby didn't do anything. The baby was born into sin, right? These kids are like terrified that if they die, that they're going to go to hell, and there's nothing they can do about it because that is what their family believes in, right? That's the reality that these religious fundamentalists believe in, and that belief causes immense stress and trauma to these kids because life is hard and they don't want to die and end up in hell when they haven't done anything wrong, right? It's in very similar ways to Anya Taylor-Joy's character is experiencing hell on earth despite not doing anything wrong. Just her mere existence, she's having to suffer hell on earth in a lot of ways. Let's take a quick break right now to talk about, are you a fan of original artwork and live events? Look no further than the Many Faces series by Ray Taylor and the weekly live stream over at youtube.com/inspired disorder. This ongoing series explores the endless possibilities of the human face through abstract ink paintings on paper, capturing unique expressions of emotion, mood, tone, and energy in just a few minimal features. Join me every Thursday at 4:20 Pacific Time as I paint live. Follow the Many Faces series and discover the endless possibilities of the human face. Don't miss out on this opportunity to be part of the action and own a piece of original artwork by me, Ray Taylor. Head to youtube.com/inspired disorder every Thursday to catch the live stream, and visit inspireddisorder.com to browse and purchase the Many Faces artwork. And now, let's get back to the show. So, and it also just in general shows how difficult life is, having to chop wood, having to grow crops, and how much of that life is out of your control, right? If crops aren't growing well, you're not getting enough rain, you're not getting enough sunshine, there's rot taking over, there's things that happen to your animals, whatever. Like, so much of life is so difficult, right? And kids kids didn't survive a lot. That's why people had a lot of kids, because most of them didn't survive. And, that's really, I think, expressed well in this movie of how difficult life was back then. No support, no infrastructure, and especially the way they are, where they are no longer in a village. So there's no neighbors to ask for help. There's no social services going on at that time. All you can do is just try and farm, try to trap to, maybe sell some pelts, do some hunting to try and get some meat, right? And just the effortless nature, the fragile aspects of life, like how easily life can be taken away. Recently reviewed the Apu trilogy, the Indian film series, where that character experienced a lot of what it's like for once somebody gets sick. It's like, just start saying goodbye now. Just being sick at all is kind of the beginning of the end when you're living that kind of lifestyle. Um, and also, while all this stuff is going on, you have these two kids who are also kind of experiencing puberty, which adds, and I would imagine is one of the causes for these parents to suspect, like all of a sudden your kids are acting far different than they used to. So to suspect them of being possessed by a witch or making a deal with the devil is kind of an interesting aspect to just a normal life change. But considering you're living in a time where basic understanding of life and how people change and how the effects of hormones, the effects of puberty, is really left up to their imagination, and their imagination, especially being molded in a religious sense, takes them to demons, the devil, witch, possessions, all of the worst kinds of things, all of the subjects of most horror movies, really. So kind of an interesting aspect of the movie as well. I do want to talk about specifics, so I am going to be spoiling this movie that came out 7 years ago, 6 years ago, depending on when you saw it. But to be warned, I am going to be talking about spoilers. I highly recommend checking this movie out. I watched it on HBO Max, but obviously go to the Just Watch app and type in The Witch. Watch it wherever it's available. It's a great movie, but I am going to be spoiling it, so you have been warned. One of the early scenes, we see Anya Taylor-Joy's character Thomason just playing peekaboo with this baby, right? The youngest member of the family, this baby, she's playing peekaboo, and just the audio of how she's saying peekaboo and the way it's edited, terrifying. Right? Like, something bad is going to happen. Like, it is the scariest depiction of peekaboo, right? In the most subtle way. And of course, the baby gets disappeared, which is that is kind of the catalyst for a lot of this stuff. The idea that this witch stole the baby, which you see and is one of the many examples of how vague things are shown, where you see that this witch has the baby and it seems like she's doing something to the baby in order to do some ritual, but it doesn't explicitly show everything that's happening, but it definitely implies what's going on. And it even implies that this witch is flying away. Like, there's this close-up shot where you see the back of the witch's head at silhouette against the moon as it's seemingly she flies away, right? But doesn't explicitly. It's very creepy what's going on. Just these quick little cuts of these things that are going on after this witch takes the baby. And that peekaboo scene just mixed with the editing is kind of crazy. And you see Caleb on multiple occasions almost hypnotized, staring at his sister's chest, right? Just, again, like the amount of incest that probably happened in those times, where you're living in this big family and that's all you have in contact with, right? And this is a family that comes from England, which the royal family, well known for, there's a lot of, even if you believe in the Bible, right? Let's just say the Bible's real for a second, and life started with Adam and Eve. Who do you think was having sex with all those people? That is a story of incest. That is the origin story of humankind. Apparently came from constant incest if everybody came from Adam and Eve, even after the floods of Noah. right? Like, if you were to take the Bible as real, then incest is a massive reason for humans existing today, which is kind of insane, right? But also, seeing him ogle his sister in some ways, which is like he's probably going through puberty as well, and it's like in those times when you're going through puberty, you have very little control over your body in many ways, right? The amount of hormones that are pumping through a boy is insane. You are in many ways possessed in those years. I don't know what it's like on the female side. Obviously, that is not how I identify. That is not the experience I had. But the possession and the kind of out of control nature of what you experience going through puberty is just kind of, it can lead to like, you staring at your sister's chest hoping that you get to see something, right? The way he looked at his sister, I remember looking at other, right, that you're looking at something so intensely that you're almost hoping that you can move matter with your eyes, right? You have telekinesis in a way to just like, I need to see a nipple now. But it's still not a big part of this, obviously, because eventually Caleb goes missing too. But you see, as this movie goes on, you see all these different circumstances as they're piling up against Thomason, right? Anya Taylor-Joy's character, starting with the baby disappearing, right? They blame that on her. She was the one watching the baby. They blame her. You have these twins, which I think the twins are the creepiest part. And thankfully, as this movie goes on, kind of confirmed that they're very creepy. Seeing this when you first see them and they're playing with this black goat, right? It's like, that is creepy. And they're like these kids that are dressed up to look like adults. So just their whole aesthetic, their moods, right? The fact that they are happy and joyful and playing, meanwhile everybody else is hating their life. That contrast is just like everything. It's a weird thing that these twins are so creepy. And they accuse Thomason of, being a witch, right? And Thomason, just to play along with them and to scare them, she goes along with it. But you see how that in itself adds to situations that come back later, where these situations are adding up against Thomason. But she's just doing it to scare them, right? She's annoyed. Get out of here. You kids are creepy as fuck. Right? Which is the beginning, really, in a lot of ways, of the entire family believing that Thomason is a witch, that she made a deal with the devil. Like, instantly. The Caleb goes missing, comes back. She's, in addition to her playing along with these twins about her being a witch, the mom's silver cup goes missing. So the dad is lying to the mom also, despite the fact she thinks it's Thomason, but he knows it was him. He also is lying to his wife about taking Caleb out into the forest, right? So a lot of these things that contribute to Thomason being the target and being to blame, in some ways are perpetuated by this dad that's not coming clean, right? Not taking responsibility for what he's done, right? And even before they instantly turn on her, accusing her of being a witch, right? When you see her overhearing her parents have a discussion where the mom is like, we need to get rid of her. She's horrible. She's old enough. We need to send her to another family so that she can take care of another family. And that's just what life was like, right? And what seems like what happened when you were 13. First off, women treated like property, right? And I see this all the time watching all these Indian films and how the culture in India, arranged marriages, a lot of the times the daughters are basically sold off to these families. Husband pays a dowry, to their bride's family, basically buying their daughter to marry at a very young age in all places in the U.S. I mean, there's still a lot of red states in the United States that would, if not do, allow for this underage marriage stuff to happen, right? But just another one of those things where her mom wants to get rid of her. And I'm sure a lot of it has to do turning 13, kind of the start of puberty, where a lot of parents probably wanted their kids gone. They don't want to have to deal with them as they're going through this puberty. But also it's a time where now these women are fertile, are able to get pregnant and have kids. And they start early, right? Because it's just what they did back then. But to hear your parents talk about first blaming you for stuff you didn't do, but then also talk about you like you are a burden on the family and they need to get rid of you and sell you off to another family. Maybe there's a family that'll take her. It's just like, that's where I think the real horror of this film is for Thomasin, is how all of the things surrounding her, this family she's in, but also the events, obviously, that are making them assume that it's her. It's kind of crazy. So then, of course, the boy wants to go out. He wants to try and make things better, right? He wants to get food or whatever to make up for whatever, and Thomasin convinces him to go with her, right? To go into the wood. They take the horse. The dog goes along. They got a gun, right? The boy's like wants to help provide for this family so that they don't focus on his sister, right? So she convinces, and of course, this creepy rabbit that keeps showing up whenever there's an event happening, this creepy rabbit shows up, she gets bucked off, and she ends up going back home. Caleb is gone, the horse is gone, their gun is gone, the dog is gone, right? And just another thing that they're going to be piling on Thomasin. She's to blame. Look, she's the reason. We need to get rid of her. It's just crazy, And then you see Caleb meeting this attractive woman that seduces him in the forest, right? Clearly the witch, and you see that when he goes to kiss her, the old woman hand goes to grab him, right? So it's definitely the fact that these people moved in next door to a witch is really the problems that are being caused, but this family is focusing all of those events on their daughter wrongly, right? Which is, it's kind of crazy. But he ends up showing back up, and of course the first thing they do is bloodletting, right? It's like, everything was insane back then, right? The types of healthcare they thought would help, like forcing somebody to bleed, which is just crazy that, like, again, in the year 2023, there is, after this pandemic, we saw all of these similar types of cures, quote unquote cures, like the snake oil type of stuff, this bloodletting type of stuff, all of these types of like old agey types of cures coming back to popular culture in a lot of ways. And it's just insane to see how far we've come, yet still so many of us are stuck in this past, this like ignorant existence where their assumptions of like magical spirits and things existed because they needed a way to describe their reality, and that's all they had. But now we're in a modern age where there's been so much discovery and so many lives have been devoted to understanding the world around us, and yet there's still so many people that will do this hocus pocus mumbo jumbo kind of stuff, you know? So it's just like you see this kid who's like Caleb, who comes back to this house clearly messed up, whatever the witch did to him. And the first thing they do is, you know, cut a notch in his eye so he could bleed out, you know? It's just it's just crazy. And then he coughs up an apple, right? The twins, like that whole scene with Caleb coming back, he's sick. You have the twins going off, telling the parents, Thomason's a witch. And then the dad, like, I'll figure this out right now. I'm going to ask you some questions, Thomason, and if you answer wrong, I'm just going to decide whether or not you're a witch. Like this insane situation, right? And then he coughs up this apple, which it's kind of interesting, the connection that apples have with witches. I don't know what that comes from. I don't know if it's necessarily like an old thing from the Bible, like Eve eating the apple in the Garden of Eden type of a thing. I don't know if that's kind of the origin for that connection of apples being, you know, an evil symbol of a witch, you know. But he coughs up an apple, and that's kind of the thing that triggers Thomason to be kind of the to blame for all this stuff, which is insane. You know, these parents just instantly assume, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, young twins. Thank you for telling me she's a witch, so she must be a witch. Okay. Yes, Thomason, now let me ask you some questions, right? Which is, you know, the Salem witch trials. It's just how many people were died because this idea that witches exist and that you come up with a way to test for that. I don't know. It's just crazy. And then the twins get possessed, which is like, okay, right? Like I kind of, you know, they were creepy. I was like, I knew it. Something's up right there where they can't pray. They're unable to pray. But I do love the performance. There is an amazing performance that Caleb's character, that Caleb has, his death performance, like sells it so well. It is amazing. So good. Like in any other movie would not work, but for whatever reason pulls it off. Completely pulls it off, which is amazing. Let's take a quick break from this episode to talk about Attention all Ray Taylor Show fans! We're excited to announce we've just released a line of exclusive merchandise featuring original artwork inspired by the show. Our high-quality shirts and biodegradable phone cases are a perfect way to show your support for the show and make a great gift for any fan. Plus, with each purchase, you'll be helping us continue to bring you great content. So don't wait. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com now and check out the full collection. Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll show your support by grabbing some Ray Taylor Show merchandise today. And now, let's get back to the show. So, after those things, right? After Caleb dies, and then they're outside. Thomason's outside with her dad. I love how she like calls him out on his bullshit. He's like, dude, I'm being blamed for things you did, and you weren't confessing to them, right? Which is another thing that a kid will get. They'll get the balls to stand up to their parents and talk back to their parents. And in this case, 100% justified. They have all of these things they're piling on Thomason, and she finally comes back and tells her dad, like, listen, you're the one who's lying. You took the thing, You sold your mom's cup. I'm being blamed for that. You took Caleb to the wood, so that's how he knew. I'm being blamed like I took him to the wood, right? All of these things are your fault. And I love that she calls him out on that, right? And of course, that scary rabbit, every time that rabbit shows up, something bad's going to happen. The twins, scariest part, whether they're playing with that black goat or not, making songs about it. The moment where the goat attacks the dad completely got me, right? Completely got me. Like, she at that point had told, right? She told her dad's like, the twins are the creepy ones, right? They're playing with this goat. They're the ones possessed. Look what happened to them. They couldn't even pray, right? The goat, and of course the goat is a symbol, Baphomet, right? The symbol of Satan. And it's a creepy goat. Kid's creepy. When the kids are like playing and the goat's like rearing up while they're playing with this goat, it's creepy. Like dancing. The goat's like dancing. They're dancing with this goat. But when that goat attacks the dad, is like completely caught me off guard. But also is like, I already believed that this goat, like I was on Thomason's side. Like I was like, yes, that's probably what's happening, right? These kids are part of what's bringing this evil into this house. But when the goat attacks the dad, it's like, oh man, it totally got me. And then, of course, the dad boards Thomason, the twins, and the goat up, right? Like, I don't want to deal with this. I'm going to cage you all in here. And then it's like that scene, what happens is like crazy. That night, you see the witch show up, right? Drinking the goat's milk. Oh yeah, there's a part where Thomason's milking the goat and blood comes out, right? Which probably is explained through a scientific reason that goats, something happens and that can happen, right? But of course it's witch. It's Thomason's fault. She's a witch. But you see the witch in the barn where everybody's boarded up, drinking the goat's milk. But the craziest part is when the mom wakes up and she sees Caleb holding the baby. And she's like, oh, you're here. Thank you. You've come back. Where did you go? And then she goes to breastfeed the baby. And the shot that is only on screen for a moment, but an image that will forever be burned into my head, is when you see that she is not breastfeeding a baby, that there is a crow pecking at her nipple. An insane scene that you see for just a split second, but will forever be burned into my brain, right? Then you see the dad praying, him eating dirt, right? You're seeing this, the descent into madness is just taking full, complete hold of these parents, right? The mom crawling into the grave with Caleb, almost like for a moment thought that the dad was just going to bury her. Thankfully he didn't, because we get to see that insane scene with the crow. But it's just, it's amazing. And then you see when the mom attacks Thomason and she's like, everybody else is dead. Like, we never really see what happened to the twins. Like, they just kind of disappear. The next morning, the barn is kind of blown open. The dad assumes it's Thomason, right? And that's when the goat stabs him and then punches him into this giant wood pile that he's been, every time he gets frustrated, chops wood, right? And then the only people left are Thomason and her mom's just freaking out, which she was doing anyway, with her bloody nipple, soaking through her nightgown or whatever. And how it ends, I found it to be great, right? I'm rooting for Thomason. I'm like, this family is horrible. This family is, I would say, the most evil aspect. Yeah, the witch is doing some stuff, probably manipulating situations here and there. But to see Thomason speak to the goat, it's like, I want you to speak to me like you were speaking to, right? Really clarifying that, yes, this goat is what caused those twins, right? Confirming that. And then seeing her write, she doesn't know how to write her name, so the devil is going to help her. And then she basically becomes one of the witches. I loved it. I loved the ending of this, right? Seeing her do that, walking into the forest naked, seeing the witches doing their ceremony around the fire, and then eventually flying up into the sky. They're all naked, flying up into the sky, and seeing Thomason. It's like, she's finally getting, I mean, if you can't beat them, join them, is the end of this movie, right? She's assumed to be a witch by everybody in her life, already received the punishment as if she was a witch in many ways. So why not? If this is going to provide her a life that is happy, that she's not going to be surrounded by like these Christian religious fundamentalists anymore, and that she can actually live a happy, free life, it's almost a happy ending, I would say. You know, her becoming a witch, her fulfilling the prophecy of what her family assumed her to be anyway. It's great. It's great. You know, way better. So overall, I mean, I thought the movie was amazing. You know, I loved it. Visually, it's amazing. The performances are great. It definitely put me in that space. Definitely made me sympathize with Thomason's character for sure. Family, far more terrifying than any of the supernatural stuff, I would say, despite the amazing visuals that you got to see. You know, just living in that time, especially as a woman, being property, just and being a burden, constantly being reminded that you're a burden to the family is just brutal as well. I also love the vague nature of the supernatural stuff, the way things were not shown, forcing you to kind of fill in the gaps on your own, while also implanting burning images into my head that I will never soon forget, right? Like, we'll never forget that. And all of the scenes, like, you can almost freeze frame any of these scenes, and they're like a work of art. Like, the cinematography in this is so great. And I'm super excited to watch his next films, right? I'm super excited to revisit The Lighthouse because I didn't love it the first time. But now after watching this and remembering what I thought about The Lighthouse, I think I'm going to love The Lighthouse a lot more. So I'm excited to rewatch that and do my first ever re-review. The first ever I'm going to be reviewing a movie that I've already reviewed on this show, but excited for that. And The Northman as well, which is a movie that I've been wanting to watch, and this makes sense if I'm going to go through his movies to finish it off and see what movie I do, see what director I choose, what other up-and-coming director I choose to do after that. But yeah, definitely I get his vibe. I know how he likes to tell stories, and I'm into it. I really am. I'm a huge fan after watching this and excited to see the next two. But I want to thank you all for tuning in to this show, The Ray Taylor Show. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on The Witch from 2015. Don't forget to tune in every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for more movie and TV show reviews, and join the conversation by leaving a comment on your favorite podcast application or platform, or on YouTube. And join me every Tuesday, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I already said that. Until next time, enjoy the show.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can